thought I'd start by telling you a story. And an interesting thing happens when I start that way, which is all of you who are in the middle of tweeting or doing whatever you're doing, all of a sudden look up. Because a story isn't the same as bullet points. A story is different. And I'm going to tell you my story without any visuals, which I think will be extraordinary at a PSFK conference. And it starts with two billboards. And the first billboard was one that I saw when I was living in Australia. And it was a declaration in a very uniquely Australian way about what it meant to be Australian. And it said very simply in quotation marks, "I sit in the front seat of a taxi." And if you've ever been to Australia, you know that this is a behavior there, that when you ride in a taxi, you climb right in the front seat next to the driver, as if you're pals going on a journey together. And I remembered that. Now, I can't do that here because I get really weird looks from cab drivers if I even attempt it, so I just stopped doing that. But when I went to South Africa a couple years ago, I did do that. And as I was journeying down the main highway that takes you from the airport in Johannesburg, Joburg as they call it, to the city, I saw all of these billboards, second set of billboards, for Nelson Mandela, just celebrating the man. I think it was his birthday around that time. So I asked my driver, I said, you know, what is it that makes him so amazing? I mean, of course we've all heard about Nelson Mandela. Of course we know his story. But what is it about him? What do you think it is? And he told me this story of how when Nelson Mandela came out of jail in 1990, and 3 years later, the country was on the brink of war. He was a leader among a certain group, and he had this moment that's been chronicled actually in a biography called Playing with the Enemy, that some of you might have read. It led to that famous film Invictus, which many of you have seen. There was this moment where the biographer called it the most unlikely political seduction ever. And essentially what Mandela did is he invited his opponents in to have tea with him. And over that tea, he talked to them, listened to them. And that moment was widely credited for avoiding a violent conflict. Over and over again, he did the same thing. When he wanted to reach someone, when he wanted to engage them, he invited them in for tea. Now think about our political climate today. Right? We're in the midst of the election season. I live in DC, so I see it all the time. There's two phenomenal words, I think, that describe everything you need to know about our political climate right now. The first word is pre-buttal. Anyone heard this term, pre-buttal? The pre-buttal is, I don't know what the guy after me is going to say, but everything he's about to say is crap. So I'm going to have a speech talking about how crap it is before I even know what he says. It's not a rebuttal, it's a pre-buttal. Right? The other thing in the media is the spin room, which they take you to directly after the debates or anything of significance in the political realm. And the spin room doesn't even pretend like it's going to be unbiased. It says, here are the guys over here who have their perfectly rose-colored glasses to say that their guy won no matter what. And here are the guys over here who said that their guys have won no matter what. Right? And that's the spin room. We're going to spin you. And I think the problem with politics and the problem with marketing is that we have created this culture of disagreement because that's what we have to have. There's no drama if there's no disagreement. And there's nothing to watch. And so what's the 24-hour news cycle going to fill? So now if you think about why people go back to this idea of the issues and why that's something that people vote on, the reason is because they think that, well, in all of this spin, if we could just get to the facts, then people would be able to make a decision. If we could just get to the facts. Problem is that the facts can be tailored this way or tailored that way. Here's a fact. Every single time that I've played basketball, I've made every single one of my basketball shots. Here's another fact. I've only been to a basketball court once, and I've only taken one shot. Now, my spin over here says I'm an expert, 100% of my shots. Who's ever done that? Even Michael Jordan hasn't done that. The other spin over here says you have no idea what you're talking about with basketball. You've only played once. Who's right? They're both facts. The problem with facts is that they focus on something that we, in general, memorialize and celebrate, which is ideas. And we often say if we just had better ideas, we could succeed. It's all about the idea. We have conferences celebrating the big idea. The problem with that is that a lot of times big ideas fail. In fact, big ideas fail all the time. So what does it take? That's really the big question that I wanted to focus on with Likeonomics, which is if it's not the big idea, if it's not the logical thing, what else is it? How else can we actually get these ideas to stick and actually achieve more agreement, avoid violent revolutions, and have all sorts of the positive things that we want to happen both in the business world and then also in our world in general?